Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn, and I run the services at medcommsnetworking.com and the associated websites. So you'll find all sorts of information, resources, activities for people who work in and around the global medcoms community, by which I mean medical education, medical communications, medical publishing, and the associated businesses and so on. Lots of information there. You'll find loads and loads of videos, hundreds of videos over at NetworkPharma TV now, many of which are based on webinars like this. And for those of you who are interested in medcoms as a career option, maybe as a medical writer or account manager, you'll find some lots of specific resources for you at firstmedcomsjob.com. Okay, so what we're doing today is we've got a webinar, one of my Wednesday webinars, and we can invite experts from all over the world, actually. Jayne, you're not that far away, but we're inviting Jayne to come on today and give us an update on what's happening with the UK ABPI Code of Practice. And we should say we're expecting a consultation to start very soon for a new ABPI code in the new year. So the idea of today was it's a good opportunity to catch up on what's been happening this year, and for Jayne to sort of tell us a little bit about what's expected. So no more from me, Jayne, over to you. Tell us who you are and talk us through what's happening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Right. Let me just share my screen. Let me get all the technicalities out of the way. Check that is all working. Peter, give me a nod. Yeah, absolutely. Great. That is all looking good as well. Good. So, Peter, first of all, thank you so much. Been with you a few times on these sessions. It is wonderful to be back. Now, if you've not met me before, just a very, very quick summary of me. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry all of my working life, actually. Oh, that is quite a long time, I have to say. 30 odd years, and started in sales, moved into medical information. And for the last 22 years, I'm actually just celebrating my 22nd birthday of being in business. I've been working very, very closely, particularly on the ABPI Code of Practice. I do some medical information, but Code of Practice is where I spent a lot of time keeping people up to date and trained in things. So look, it's a delight to be here to talk about some hot topics for you. And in particular, I've got three things on the agenda for you. I just want to reflect and stop just for a moment, just to reflect on what is happening with the ABPI code case sort of landscape. I do want to give you a bit of a heads up on the 2024 code. You know, what are we expecting? When are we expecting it? What might be in there that we need to plan for into 2024? And I just want to end up with just a few hot topics. I've got maybe 4 or 5 themes that have coming through in recent code cases. So look, I know this session is being recorded, so a few things. I'm really happy to give pragmatic viewpoints, but of course, it's not advice for your company policies and things. So just when I mention a code case, please go and read that in full, look at the code, and of course, follow your own internal policies. And then just one really important thing. This has got time-sensitive information in it. So this presentation is correct at the time of recording, but please, if you're listening to the playback, don't rely on this content at a later date because of that time-sensitive nature. So let me start off with topic number one, the code case landscape. What is happening out there with cases and things? Well, what I've done, just to give you a bit of a feel, is I've looked back at cases from the last of 12 months. And the reason I think it's just important to reflect on this is because you're going to be working with a lot of pharmaceutical companies. And I'm aiming this very much at the MedComms, but if you're there in industry as well, you know, you've got the reciprocal side that you're working with lots of agencies potentially as well. But you will know that if a code breach comes through, just always be aware this can actually have quite a big change on client practices and their approach to risk. So I always say it is worth keeping an eye on these code breaches coming through because they could account for why a company suddenly changes something overnight. So what's happening at the moment? Well, look, roughly in the last 12 months, we've had around 115 published cases from the PMCPA. And of that, we've got quite a shocking figure, actually. 57% of those cases are actually from 6 companies. So what we've got to be mindful of is you've got a number of companies who are turning into almost top offenders, top breachers of the code. And if we're wondering who those names are, say, having gone through those 115 cases, here are the top 6 for you just to reflect on. So look, we've got AstraZeneca and Novartis who are in top position there with 15 alleged breaches of the code against them, or alleged cases against them. We've then got Daiichi Sankyo, 14 cases against them. We've got Roche with 9. We've got Novo Nordisk with 7, and Leo there just into my top 6 with 5 cases against them. So I just wanted as well to give you, a bit more detail as to why these cases coming about, what are the penalties and things, just again to reflect on what's happening out there in code land. So look, I've just taken AstraZeneca as an example. No other reason, they're just alphabetically A, top of the list there. So we can see here that they have had 15 cases against them, but only 12 ended up with breaches of the code. But when we look at these cases, there are multiple alleged breaches and actual breaches in every single case. So to give you a rounder picture, they've actually had 41 clause breaches across those 12 published cases, including 3 breaches of clause 2. Clause 2, a lot of you will have heard me say, I describe clause 2 as the naughty clause, okay? So clause 2 is the one where somebody is alleged of bringing discredit on or reducing confidence in the industry. And so clause 2 is not the clause that you want to get, and it's got an extra level of sanctions with it as well in terms of an extra administrative charge. So we've had, 12 cases against them. If I get my calculator out, I reckon that in terms of administrative charges, which the PMCPA will levy, they will have a fine of around about £155,000. Now, I know some of you here are, from the US. This is nothing like, the lawsuits that go in the US and things. But £155,000, that is not an insignificant amount of money. And so from a client perspective, they will definitely be pulling in certain projects, they'll be checking things. And so I would say that those breaches absolutely will be having an impact. Probably it will be with all the other companies as to what they're doing and, say, their tolerance to risk. But as you know, these are not just about fines, these cases. It's about the time that the company has to spend defending it. If they're working with you as a third party, you may also have to provide various information. And of course, it's all about the reputation of these companies to the wider audience, healthcare professionals and the likes. And some obviously will end up in the press as well. Novo Nordisk were on the list. I've not spoken to you all recently, but hey, I just thought I should mention this just to make sure everyone is aware that Novo Nordisk obviously have got not too many individual cases here, but they have ended up with the ultimate sanction that the PMCPA can warrant. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be aware, and you'll have seen the publicity back in March of this year, where Novo Nordisk have been suspended from the UK Trade Association, the ABPI, the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry. And just to put this into context, this is not a normal affair. So when a company is suspended, everyone's going, oh my word, what have they done to warrant such a severe sanction? They are only the 8th company to be suspended from the ABPI in 40 years. And what this practically means is that they can no longer access the benefits of ABPI membership. So it doesn't mean that the medicine licenses that Novo Nordisk have suddenly been revoked by the MHRA. The sanctions are not that tough. They are stepping away from the benefits of ABPI membership. So being at the political table, shaping as to what the industry is doing. But there's also as well, this is very clearly published in things, that they are now going through a stage where they are undergoing mega audits. It has been sanctioned that they'll have audits at the end of 2023, also at the end of 2024. And they've also got to submit quarterly progress improvement reports to the PMCPA, which are no doubt going to be shared with the wider ABPI board and things, to see what steps are being taken and how are they improving. So here, just a few examples here from press. The top one there is the Daily Mail. That gives you a quite good snippet as to actually what the case was about and things. But if you've not read the case, you're not aware of it, then please do, because it's a fairly massive case. Lots of different aspects to it. So if you read one case, I would say go and read this one because there's massive learning points there. But look, if we pull it back and go back to that wider landscape, what is going on? What are the trends coming through? Well, I'd say it's a real mixed bag. We are getting breaches and allegations across pretty much every area of the code. We've got some around press releases. We've had some very high profile interviews of senior people, which have then triggered breaches and things. Advisory board meetings, not too many cases, but we always have a few. Not to be surprised, social media. We have a lot of cases about social media, so a few comments on that. And then we are back to the bread and butter, the quality standards of information. So we've had issues with claims which couldn't be substantiated, footnotes, hiding information at the bottom of pages, that type of thing. And I've got one for you about SMPC information, because we've got a bit of a shift in sentiment on that. Otherwise, I'll come back to declarations and digital and adverse events and prescribing information, just to give you a few pointers as well on those. I've put those into my big hot topics, repeating cases which are coming through. But whilst we're here just looking at that landscape, you might be thinking, okay, we've got some companies with a lot of cases. So what is triggering the cases? What do you need to be aware of? So as we can see, some of those cases are being triggered by audit findings. This may be an internal audit. This may be that they've got a third-party internal auditor, sorry, a third-party auditor in, or it could be an audit from the PMCPA themselves. And if the PMCPA are concerned about levels of compliance, they have that sanction to do audits, just like we've seen with Novo Nordisk going further forwards. But some of these companies with large numbers of cases are actually suffering from either current employees or ex-employees who have got concerns about the compliance procedures within organizations. So when we look at Roche, when we look at Leo, when we look at Novartis, Daiichi Sankyo, I think they've also fallen foul of this, but a lot of those companies there have got people who should really be going to their employers, using their whistleblowing policies and things to try and resolve the differences internally. But as you'll know, anyone can make an alleged breach of the code. And we know that sometimes employees get themselves into a position where they've spoken to their employers. They may then be really frustrated that they're not being heard, and they feel they have no option to go to the PMCPA. A case will then be brought against their employer or their ex-employer. Other triggers, and this third one makes me so sad, it's just a lack of code knowledge. Some of those breaches which have come through for me as a code expert, having worked with the code for 22 years and things, are really obvious that it's going to end up as a breach of the code. But some of those, if you have lesser knowledge, still are obvious breaches as well. And it's also that companies are not following policy and knowledge. But also, interestingly, what I see coming through is we've got a bit of a shift and clarification in code interpretation from PMCPA. And so let me show you a few shifts and trends that I am certainly seeing that are coming through. The way the code works is that the complainant must always provide the evidence and the reasons why they specifically think that there is a breach. And what we're seeing is that people who are making an alleged breach of the code need to be incredibly precise in their wording and their language. And what we're seeing in the past, that somebody would sort of make an allegation. Maybe they didn't quite get the clause number right. Maybe the wording was not specific to the code. And the PMCPA would go, okay, we understand what you're meaning, and so let's assess it in this. We've had a few really significant cases where that is not happening. So it's all about the complainant having the exact right phrase, having the exact right clause number for them to be able to assess it. So they're getting tough on the PMCPA side, is what I would say. We've got a few other shifts, again, in including SMPC information. I'll come back to that one as well. And then, to be expected, we've got the code, we've got guidance documents, but gosh, the code landscape constantly changes. Those goalposts constantly change. And it's only when we get clarification through guidance documents, code cases, maybe about the length of time needed to read the prescribing information of presentation, maybe how actually do we digitally certify materials. It's only when we get these cases coming through that clarify what we all should be doing. And so then we all need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on those. So, but it's an ever-changing goalpost is the way that the code is interpreted. One final bit before I get onto a different topic is just always remember, if you are looking at those code cases and you see that the ruling is a no breach of the ABPI code, don't assume that that means it is okay and what they've done is code compliant. As we've just seen, if the wording is slightly wrong, if the evidence is not absolutely spot on, there could be a glaring breach of the code, but the PMCPA might rule that there is a lack of evidence, so we are ending and awarding a no breach. So don't think that it is okay to do certain things which are a no breach. And just, if you've got any questions on that, just let me know. So my next topic, just to dive onto, is, what's happening. You may well have heard that we are being promised a new 2024 code. Just a few points as to where we're up to. And this is the very time-sensitive information, okay? I checked just before I came online. There is nothing still on the PMCPA website. But look, here are some timings just to add to your diary and to watch out for. We're expecting a public consultation on the proposed changes to the code sometimes this quarter. They hoped originally that it would be September, okay? And they hoped it would be September. September, obviously, long, come and gone. We're now in November, but they are still hoping, as far as I know, a public consultation will be before Christmas. Then what happens is they need to assess all the comments, discuss. It then needs to go back to the ABPI to an AGM meeting. They were hoping that that's going to be approved in December or January of 2024. And then the latest that I've heard is that that new code will go live in 2024, hopefully in Q1. And then if they follow the normal suit, we all then have a grace period of 4 months where there is a transition period that you will not be found in breach in that 4-month window to anything that is new in the code. But of course, so watch out for that coming through. But I just share this one because, of course, probably the most excitement, the excitement for a lot of people anyway, is what colour is going to be the code. So look, I have purposefully got this little picture here. For me, I'm having a punt on it, okay? I'm going blue. I'm just having it out there. Whether it's correct or not, I don't know. But please let me know, what do you think in terms of the colour of that code coming through? But it will change colour to help us identify it, if you've got it on bookshelves and things. So, watch out for that. And look, people are saying, well, what changes might we see? And this is a huge might. Again, very, very time sensitive. And we don't know what is going to be changed until it gets to that final publication form. But this is what we are hearing at the moment. And the PMCPA have done, a few talks and things. And that's where I've got this information from. They are saying that it's going to be a light touch. So it's not going to be the massive change that we saw in going from the 2019 red code to the current green code, where everything turned upside down. So fingers crossed, a light touch. They are saying they're going to be looking at prescribing information. They're going to be looking at QR codes. A lot of you asked me about QR codes and PI in training. And they're also, I understand, going to be looking at the adverse event statement location. Now, I love a bit of a QR code. So look, if you want to stay up to date and get any more sort of updates as this goes through, get your phone out. There's my QR code for my newsletter. Feel free to sign up if you think it will be helpful to keep you on top of code changes. Otherwise, they're going to be looking at terminology, okay? The ones that I'm hearing particularly are around the terminology of signatory, those people who are, signing off on the pharmaceutical company side. I hear as well they're going to be looking at the AQP roles, trying to give a bit more definition. And they are talking about medical and non-medical. We'll have to wait and see what that actually looks like. Otherwise, they're also talking about plain English terminology, a few more definitions to try and clarify things. This will be music to my ears to have a bit more plain English in the code. It's written in quite old-fashioned language and things, so we will see what comes out from that. So those are the big areas that you can expect to see coming through. But with that caveat, we don't know exactly what will come through until we get the consultation, and then when it's confirmed after it's gone through the board. And people are going, yes, plain English, don't hold your breath. Hey, but we can live in hope. That would make me very, very happy. So look, last few points. Okay, few hot topics. What things have been happening which you absolutely must have on your radar? A few little examples for you. One very big hot topic is all about digital certification. And I've got a case here from AstraZeneca, which I've just mocked up. Here we've got an example where, look, they had the intended audience, top and bottom. Of course, there was a promotional website, and then they had this breadcrumb, the navigation route. But when it went and somebody looked at it on the mobile version, that audience and also the navigation was missing on that homepage. To cut a long story short and absolutely give you a nugget, we've got a couple of extra phrases which the PMCPA are now talking about. They are now saying that if the substantive content of the website changes, and by that they mean the audience, that's what they thought was substantive, they said that is not acceptable, and it should have been picked up on the recertification of the mobile view. It was missing, it should have been there. But they then say that navigation breadcrumb thing that was missing on the mobile version, well, that was not a breach, because they've got this new phrase saying this is a technical matter of web page functionality and navigation. So the take home is always check digital websites as you go through the platforms, desktop to tablet to mobile. If there is a substantive change in going through those platforms, then the company needs to certify in those different platforms. That's it in a nutshell. And look, another one related to that. Again, imagine this is a promotional website. We've had some more extra guidance document about the adverse event reporting statement. So where we are at the moment, if you've got a promotional website which starts off life as a desktop, hopefully at the top we've got nice prominent statements about clicking for prescribing information and the adverse event reporting statement. The statement either at full at the top, or it's called out at the top and then in full at the bottom. A couple of ways to do it. But watch out for, again, when you check it on a tablet or a mobile, to make sure that this critical information isn't sucked into the index. If it is, it basically means that, number one, it's no longer prominent, so you've got a code breach there. But also with PI, you've got to have a single direct click link through. If it's gone into that menu, this basically means you've got to have 2 clicks to get to the prescribing information. So we've got breaches there as well. And look, just in case this is news for you, go and have a look on the PMCPA website. I would say in their search box, put in adverse event, and it will pull up a new guidance document that they released, admittedly a few months ago, but just in case you've not seen it. And here it gives us more clarity about the adverse event reporting statement. And here we're saying it's got to be prominent in those digital materials, so not in a link to prescribing information in a way where it's unlikely to be missed. And then they put the responsibility across to the pharmaceutical company. It's up to you to decide how best to meet that requirement. So do check out that as well. My next little snippet for you in my hot topics, of course, is going to be social media. Okay. And again, just to make sure that everyone is aware that back in January, I guess it's old news, but there was a new social media guidance published by the PMCPA. But then since then, PMCPA have done some video recordings, they've done some slides, and they've done an extra Q&A document. So if you're trying to grapple with social media, what you can and can't do, there's great resources on the PMCPA website. I have to say, it's probably the biggest topic that I'm asked to cover when I do training. So a lot of you are still trying to figure it out because of the complexity of all these different bits of information. And of course, lots of code cases that you need to look at. But one thing that you need to think about from a third-party post, never forget that if you have got a connection with a pharmaceutical company through your posts, these may well come in scope of your client's social media responsibility. And this here is what comes in scope of the code. So from a pharma side, any material that the UK company is involved in or has sponsored, okay, Novo Nordisk fell foul of that, which ended up them with that massive suspension, okay. But also it's any information from UK employees or third parties. So if you're there in an agency, then you're going to be that third party. So you've got to think about what you're posting. And then, of course, it's about information you're disseminating. UK employees, but also third parties through your own social media accounts. And just never forget that if you are there with a connection to a pharmaceutical company and a UK pharmaceutical company or a UK-based pharma company, then you could then be seen. So if you post something with a connection to that company, we're talking about a nexus. That is the new word that the guidelines are talking about. So if you are posting something linked to the work that you are doing, the topic that you are doing, for example, you will be perceived under the code as representing that pharmaceutical company. And global employees based in the UK, they can also come under the UK code as well. So there's lots of things, but that's the key one. Don't forget that you've got to think what you are putting on your social media accounts because of the scope of the code. Couple of last ones just to finish off. The massive hot topic is declarations of involvement, declarations of sponsorship. We've had a lot of cases around this, okay? So my top tips for you is to expect longer and more explicit declarations of involvement of sponsorship. We are almost to the point where if you've got a comment saying this is sponsored by company X, it's probably not watertight and fit for purpose, okay? Probably is what I'm saying. We've got a case that said no, we've got a case that said yes, but to future-proof, have in explicit declarations, what is the exact level of involvement? Is it financial? Is it that you've, invited the speakers? Make it really transparent. As always, be careful about arm's length agreements. Okay, check the Novo Nordisk case for that, because there was some great pointers in it. So what you've always got to think is prominent, unambiguous statements about declarations of involvement of sponsorship. And we've had cases around emails, publications, social media. It's across the board that you've got to think about this. Then literally a final case to hopefully bring a smile to your faces. This was a great case, and it's just a reminder that some of you there are involved in meetings, and we know we've got really high standards when we are arranging meetings and events. It's not just about the actual detail, it's about the impression that is given. To cut a long story short, this was a meeting in Monaco, in a leading hotel of the world, part of that chain. Chroma decided to fend themselves as the least luxury room, and the PMCPA, disagreed and things. But look, the signage made a massive contribution to this case. The hotel, unbeknown to Chroma, put up this signage saying cocktails, meeting and dinner, presumably this way. And even though cocktails were not served at this meeting, the PMCPA said that signage should have been code compliant. So this is where you've absolutely got to be mindful of as a third party, are the things that you do in code compliant? And look, even though there were no cocktails there, they had mentioned cocktails, the hotel had mentioned it on their sign. They end up with multiple breaches of the code, including a breach of clause 2, that naughty clause for excessive hospitality. So I just put that in the mix, okay? It's about the impression of meetings that is really important as well. So check for all materials that might come across there. So look, that's where I'm going to stop. It's been a whirlwind tour through. Peter, I'm going to say cheers. It's probably a little early UK time to be having a nice cocktail and things. But yeah, really happy to look at any questions and things at this point.
Excellent. Thanks, Jane. Let's lose the slides and just go back to us.
Yes.
Excuse me. But thank you very much for that. Very comprehensive and useful and thought-provoking, and all the usual comments that I always say when you talk to us. It's interesting to see what's going on. And I'm going to ask the question that I probably asked every time you come on. Just give us a couple of minutes, if that. Just put it in perspective, because we have got an international audience. So we're talking about the UK Code of Practice, yeah? Just remind us how that fits in with FPA and so on. And am I right? Correct me if I'm wrong. The last update of the UK Code of Practice was 2021, wasn't it? And that was, and they embraced a number of changes that come through from the FPA code that had been updated. So just a point of clarification, we're talking about a new UK code in 2024. Have there been updates to the, or are there updates expected to the likes of the FPA code? So sorry, there's several points in there, but you know what I'm trying to get at. Just give us the wider picture for the international audience.
Just to clarify, absolutely. The UK code is 2021 and the next one will be 2024. But that UK code is based on a cascade of codes, as you've said. So the level above is the European code and the level above that is the international code. So we're going to see, if you're overseas, a huge amount of commonality in terms of the points, the principles, the ethos, through all national level codes, because everything in the international code has to be cascaded into Europe. Everything in Europe has to be cascaded into every single country's individual code within Europe. So hopefully, even in the US, you're going, no, we wouldn't be doing cocktails either, because we've got the same high standards in terms of, meetings and things like that as well. So hopefully, is that okay?
But to be specific, the FPA code isn't being updated at the moment, leading to an update of the UK code. The UK is doing its own update.
I have not seen any changes coming through in FPA, which has triggered it. I have heard via the grapevine that they are working on things, but I have not seen anything on it, just to make that clear as to, what I know and what I don't know. But I don't believe that the UK code change has been triggered by a European update like the 2021 was, in part.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a number of questions coming. The audience, please do throw as many questions at us or your own comments as you like, and we'll try and build them into the next 10 minutes or so of conversation. I thought, for what it's worth, maybe I'll just pick some of these questions, okay, and we'll see where we end up. Although I've got a couple of more general comments as well, but let's go with a couple of quick questions. Grace, for instance, when you were talking about who raises the cases, Grace came in earlier in your presentation and said you didn't mention competitor firms raising cases. They obviously do. Just out of interest, in context of the other sources of complaints that you put up, are competitors less important, or are they in the mix? Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So,
I sort of assume competitors are firing their complaints, but are they actually a majority cause?
When we look at the numbers and the stats, so no, companies going head to head, those competitor firm complaints are not there at the top of the sort of the league as to who is making the complaints. But having said that, there will be a lot of companies complaining directly to each other, because companies have to go through a period of intercompany dialogue. So if they go, okay, yeah, we agree, we got that wrong, they will change that. Behind the scenes, it will never, ever get to the PMCPA unless they can resolve it. So a lot of that will happen behind the scenes on that one.
That's probably quite a useful point to make there. Dawn, interesting question here maybe from Dawn. You mentioned that cases are needed to confirm the code interpretation and goal. It's very case-based, isn't it? Dawn's basically saying, is that okay, or should the code simply be clearer to start with? But I guess you can't get away from the fact that it is a case-based code. So therefore that's what it is.
Yeah. It is hugely almost built on sort of, the idea of legislation and case findings and things. I've heard the PMCPA talking about this many times, and I actually do agree with what they say. We could make the code incredibly detailed, where we could leave no stone unturned and everybody would then know, right, this is what we can do. But you know what? It will stifle innovation and creativity. And it could also stifle, companies' wishes to, try something different to meet their strategic needs. So at times, it is better that we have areas where it is not black and white, so we can then, try the code out to find out where the goalposts actually lie. I know that's hard, but that's where I always come from. Embrace the gray and the lack of definition, because it gives us the opportunity to try things out, is what I would say.
The problem with that, and I say this with a certain degree of passion, because I got a bit involved in it when the internet started being used and so on. And I know things are a little bit different now, but what's your comment on this? There's a time lag by definition, isn't there? And that time lag and what's happening behind the scenes can be quite long. And if you take fast moving technologies, for instance, you know, and we were in the position when the web was first being developed and so on, to take a simple example from a while ago, where people didn't know that behind the scenes cases were being commented on, and people were still doing things, and you sort of think, well, this is all very well, but it is very bureaucratic and very time consuming. What's to stop me getting into trouble for something that was agreed a few months ago, sort of thing, just hasn't yet been published and so on. Just on that note, I do know it's not the same as it was when I'm referring to how is the process of distributing the case results, and what is the time scale now?
If I'm honest, it's not too good at the moment. PMCPA acknowledge
Right.
that they still have a huge backlog of cases. When
Right.
cases are published, you can see obviously the date that the case came in, the date when it finished, and the date when it's been published. And as a rough guide, cases are pretty much taking 12 months to come through. So you're
Oh,
right.
right. Okay. I thought it was going to be much better than this. But also, when that happens, I mean, the particular case that I get excited about, if I'm allowed to, was where they spent 12 months or so assessing the case, and then there was an appeal, which took another 12 months or something. So there was a particular point at which something that was a bit of a hot topic in the industry, was all being resolved behind the scenes over a 2-year period while everyone was arguing about it up front. I mean, that's still, frankly, real life, is it? Appeal process can drag things out like that.
Can do. I think if a hot topic comes up, so like the adverse event reporting statement location, companies historically have always had that as a click-through link on digital materials into the prescribing information. So here was a situation where, particularly on LinkedIn, actually, there was lots of debate. Well, we do this, we do that. And so the PMCPA did react to that concern by issuing, the guidance document. So if it's something massive and there is enough weight behind it, the PMCPA will do these guidance documents to help companies manage as to, what is the black and white, what should we be doing? Otherwise, you're right, we could have a gap of 12 months, 2 years in your example there, where we don't actually then learn the finer points of it. And that's just the way it works. But the PMCPA are hoping to be able to get through this backlog, and they absolutely are wanting to get through these cases more quickly, which I think is going to be a very, very positive thing, just like you said, so we can learn as to what the goalposts are. And also, I think, that it is less painful for companies and the complainant, because these cases can be all-consuming.
Yeah.
So it's, it takes a toll on people. I've worked with many people on this, and it is not comfortable when you've got cases hanging over you. So I really hope on a number of levels that they really do speed this up.
Yeah, I think that's often underestimated, isn't it? Just that sort of admin toll and the reputational toll and so on. It's easy to go, oh, it's just a code of practice. But actually, again, I've been involved in that. It can be very, very consuming. Let's deal with a couple of quick questions. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ignore these. Let's get a couple of quick ones in. Susanna, it's a bit random, okay, but how long should the PI be visible in a video without the viewer having to pause the video? There's probably a little bit of a discussion in there, but can we answer that one a bit simply?
Yes, so so there are a couple of cases. If you're doing a live presentation, oh no, it was a question about the video.
This is a video.
Okay. Video, we've had a case from a company where they were able to pause the video, and even though it was displayed for not long, they were able to argue a no breach. So we've got no black and white to say that this is how long it will be there, but a video case, You might want to think about doing a pop-up, to say, please pause the video. That would reduce your risk if you did that. But on a video, if they can pause it, you've not got to worry, say, based on that case, the amount of time they can see it. If it's a live session, that's a different matter, because it's got to be there for enough time for the person to read the prescribing information. And that is a slightly more challenging one.
Okay, there's something to look at there. Trishna is asking about breaches relating to interactions with patient engagement type activity. Anything to comment on there? Anything new?
Pharma-patient interactions that could...
We should say Trishna is a patient advocate, so she's involved in sort of patient-pharma type
work. There aren't any massive cases which are immediately springing to mind on that one. I'm being put on the spot. There may be something there, but there is nothing there. Otherwise, just always think about patient comments. If you are getting a patient story, maybe it's going to be used in a promotional video, then just never forget that that's a contractual service. So think paperwork, and just make sure that all their comments are code compliant is where I would go as a general thought.
Okay, Amanda's asking, do the ABPI Patient Advisory Council get involved in refreshing the code of practice? I'm not sure how that would all work, but is that a route to get some advice and input, or doesn't that happen in practice?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. So they always consult very, very widely. I know at the moment, the consultation, the redrafting is, with, 20 plus pharma companies and things, but they will certainly consult with, the rural colleges. They will look at bribery, all the government sort of organizations and things as well. So they do consult widely. But I don't know if they specifically go to the Patient Advisory Council. Not sure on that one. But apart from they do consult very, very widely.
Okay, I'm going to be slightly flippant. There's a smile on my face, but Grace has asked it, not me. She's saying she's half surprised the topic of AI hasn't come up yet. You and I talked a couple of days ago about the fact I was going to try and think of a way of getting it into the conversation. But okay, everyone's talking about AI, but the truth is, from your point of view, you can't go, oh yes, AI has come up in a case recently or something, can you?
Not a case that's been published. No,
Wait
I'm
and see.
I'm sure it will raise its head. I hear about, people obviously using AI very, very widely and things, writing policies, procedures. I'm thinking, oh, just keep that human touch in there. Absolutely. As you would with any AI. So yeah, but it's a fantastic tool. Fantastic. If used well.
I think that, and you and I were talking the other day about this. I mean, that's the important point. I mean, people jump to, but if AI writes the document, how can it understand the regulations? Well, the AI isn't supposed to write the document. It might provide a basis for whatever or input into, but the human being is still there supposedly to make sure it's correct and so on. So, okay, we won't go any further, Grace, with the AI topic. And I wanted to ask, I'm going to ask a couple of questions off my little crib sheet here, which I was writing on while you were talking. I'm just interested, well, a couple of my questions. One is, just out of interest, you mentioned the social media guidance that came out at the beginning of the year. Long waited, everyone was a bit excitable about getting finally social media. You mentioned there's still social media codes. I just wonder, since January, I think it came out in January, would you say it's actually helped in the way that people hoped? Because there was all that sort of hype. It's coming. Oh, it's finally here. Has it actually helped sort problems out in practice or not? I'm being maybe slightly provocative here, but
I think it has given companies some confidence to say that, yes, look, certain things on social media are acceptable, with caveat if they're code compliant or not. So I've certainly seen on social media far more adverts. No, let me take the word advert, non-promotional posts for promotional meeting, for example, and that is covered in those guidelines, and gives us some pointers as to, what we can and can't do to make it code compliant. Things like clinical trial recruitment, that was never really it's never really been in the code. It doesn't come up through code cases, but it gives us, a few pointers there. Likewise, press releases. putting press releases onto social media is tricky. We've had number of breaches there, but again, they've at least put in some call out boxes. It's entitled example of what might be acceptable. So plenty of room for maneuvering there, so, but at least gives us a few pointers. So I do think the guidance, has certainly been helpful to clarify, as to what can be done. Where we're still obviously struggling, I think the lion's share is where people interact personally on social media and they forget and they hit the like button, they hit the share button, they write a comment on something, not realizing that this will then bring in scope of the code. And that's where we're still getting lots of breaches coming through. So it's employees and of course third parties interacting.
And I don't think you mentioned it, but no sense that there's any sort of particular update of that guidance in the 2.24 update that's coming of the main code.
I haven't heard it mentioned. I think they've invested obviously a lot of time in the guidelines and the extra Q&A and things. So I wouldn't be surprised if they leave it as an aside, but say until we see what actually is coming through, we won't know. But I've not heard it in any of the talks saying, yeah, it's going to be dragged in.
Okay, I'm gonna stick one more question in, and I know I'm putting you on the spot slightly again, and I'm not entirely sure of my facts here, but I am aware that there is, and specifically in the UK, there is a conflict between, when you're in medical education, there is a little bit of a conflict between what the FBA code is saying, what the UK code is saying, and if you're a UK pharma company funding arm's length education, you can still get yourself in trouble because the UK PMCPA code is demanding that you can check the content, and the CME codes are saying no, you can't really, and it's supposed to be arm's length. There was definitely conflict in there, and I just wondered, without getting bogged down in it, whether you've got a view on it, whether you see it happening and playing out in reality. Because as I understand it, there are, in CME terms now, there are certainly companies who are basically saying don't do CME in the UK, because you can't do CME properly, independent medical education properly, if it's going to go through a promotional code sort of thing. I don't want to get too bogged down in this. I just wondered whether you had any top line thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, you're right. There is differences between Europe and the UK, which does make it a challenging playing field. It's a massive one to unpick, if I'm completely honest, in terms of, in the UK, can you just have site to check medical accuracy and things? It's a massive topic. But I think the simple answer is that within the UK code, we don't have a specific section about medical education. The PMCPA have always said that every meeting, every event has got to have medical educational content. And so for that reason, they have not pulled across the FBA guidance historically into the UK code. But yeah, there's really good guidance in the FBA code, actually, and it's in one of the annexes. They've added that in there about lifelong, I think it's called lifelong learning. Apologies if I've got that phrase right, but it's that type of thing, which does give guidance. And I think for the scope of this, I would say just have a look at what they've got in the FBA code, because it is a massive topic.
Okay. Let's not go too far with that. And full transparency here, I was involved with the European CME Forum when it kicked off. So, although I'm not involved nowadays, but I'm aware that there is an ongoing discussion around that basic conflict. Some people try and do the right thing, but can't do the right thing. You get very caught up in this. Is it educational promotion and so on? Okay, I'm going to stop there. We've run out of time. But I think a point of an exercise like this is to get people thinking a little bit, flag some of the new stuff that's coming through. You've made it very clear that we're not absolutely sure what's going to happen, but we are expecting essentially a new code 2024, which is worth everyone being aware of. Very important that everyone knows, as always, people can contact you directly. That's part of the point of these exercises. I know, Jayne, you're very happy to hear from people. You provided links to your websites and so on, but LinkedIn is a very easy way of doing that. If anybody's interested in what I'm doing, medcommsnetworking.com, will reach out to me anytime. But for the purposes of the recording, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say to the audience, don't rush away. We can still pick off a couple of questions here. But huge thanks to you, Jayne. And let's just give everybody a little wave and stop the recording for today. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.